All right, Coach Drew, today I want to talk a little Iowa transfer portal with you, and I'm going to do something that we never do when we talk about Iowa football. I want to talk about the wide receivers first. I think that Tim Lester has a real opportunity this year to evolve the offense. And that opportunity comes from a change of the guard at wide receiver. So obviously we lose Weetjen, who was an All-American kick returner. Everybody loved Caden Weetjen. You lose Gill, you lose Phillips. Gill was your leading wide receiver with 278 yards last year. Now, this is not to beat the dead horse about the wide receivers in the passing game not being the most productive part of Iowa's offense. The opportunity, though, that I see here, Coach Drew, is that you bring in guys like Evan James from Furman and Tony Diaz from Texas Rio Grande Valley, who respectively caught 65 and 67 balls. One had about 800, one had almost 900 yards receiving. Your leading wide receiver last year caught 20-some balls. There's a culture thing, Coach Drew, on teams and in certain position group rooms. So I had experience playing and coaching at two different schools, okay? The one school was a smaller school, but the wide receivers produced way better. It was a culture thing. They had a couple good playmakers who were all state players at this school, and the mentality of I am getting open, I am going to go get the football existed at the one school, and it did not exist at the other school. So you now have all receivers that have come basically to Iowa since Tim Lester's been there. Okay. This now is like he's got his guys in the room. So if you're wanting to expand the passing offense and expect more production, this really is kind of like a clean break from the old system and the old players who were used to playing in the old system. Look, Gill and Weetjen and Phillips, they were good run blockers. They were good team guys. They were good Hawkeyes. But now you have guys, look, that transfer in. If I'm Evan James or I'm Tony Diaz and I caught 65 or 70 balls for 800 some yards last year, I don't transfer to Iowa because I'm expecting to catch 20 balls this year. I'm coming in expecting to be a playmaker. And I think that's why you go out in the portal and you get guys that are high volume pass catchers. You get guys that are used to getting a lot of targets. Because no matter whether Hecklinski or Brown ends up starting at quarterback, of course, we kind of expect it to be Hecklinski at this point. But no matter who the quarterback is, you have receivers there now that have the expectation of the football coming their way. Does that make sense, Coach Drew, what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the wide receivers that they're bringing in are from Central Texas. They went to a little bit smaller schools, not big schools. But that's the thing about this. That's where we're transitioning to in the transfer portal or even freshmen. Everybody that wins big gets the juniors and seniors who are transferring, while the freshmen and sophomores want to get playing time. They got to go to smaller universities. Well, in Central Texas, if you didn't know, south of Austin, they play good football. And that's exactly where Lance and Tony come from. I've been to those places. Those areas are sought after for wide receivers. I think it's a good opportunity for them to transition and come to Iowa, where Iowa needs somebody. They need a hero. And this is somebody going from Texas. Also, the area that they're from kind of resembles Iowa. Just a quick insight. So they're going to feel
It's
right
pretty
at
flat,
home.
yeah.
Yeah, so they're gonna come in. The only thing that they will experience that they're not used to is the cold. But I'm sure if they're winning, I think they can get over that, Nick.
I think they will, Coach Drew. I think that they will be excited for the chance to jump up in competition level. And just one more thing on the wide receivers before we move on. Yeah, guys that are getting targeted this many times, they're used to going up in traffic, expecting the football, high pointing it, finding crevices in the defense to get open. And I think that injecting that in with Vanderzee and Dayton Howard, who finished the year strong last year. I mean, we don't have to tell Iowa fans all the potential that Vanderzee has. Somebody compared him to Charlie Becker the other day on a podcast I was listening to. You know, you got two big athletic receivers already in the room, and now you brought in a few smaller guys that have a different skill set. I really like this Iowa offense to have a new look this year. Obviously, power running is always going to be in their DNA with Kirk Ferentz, and Barnett, the offensive line coach, does a fantastic job. I really expect something different in Iowa City this year. Now, this is a way too early thing. We're filming this in the winter and the off season. But that really is my feeling that this offense will have a different look next year, Coach Drew. Speaking of offensive line, the thing that we love to talk about when we talk about Iowa, I like this Trent Wilson kid that they brought in from JMU. He's 6'3", 300 pounds. His high school weightlifting numbers that are reported are they're pretty top level. They say the kid benched 380 pounds. He squatted almost 600 and cleaned over 300 pounds. And I've been around a few guys that hit those numbers coaching at the high school level. That kid's a monster. Kirk Ferentz and Coach Barnett will turn this kid into an absolute monster if he sticks around. I'll be excited to see what they can do with Trent Wilson. I also think the running back room is going to be strong next year. I know that Jazz transferred out and, it's a little disappointing, but I really love Kamari Moulton, and I think LJ Phillips that they brought in from South Dakota is a physical between the tackles runner. He's the type of guy, some backs just like to run to space, and that's not really what you're looking for in Iowa. You want guys that will pound it in the A gap and the B gap when you ask them to, and I think that LJ Phillips is that type of runner. Special teams. All right, you lost LeVar Woods, went to Michigan State. He took Reese Dakin with him. Kicker graduated, all-time leading field goal leader at Iowa. So you lost some there, but you brought in an Aussie. You brought in two punters. You brought in Tanner Philpott, who averaged 44 yards a punt last year, and you brought in an Aussie kid, Boston Everett. So that's the trend in college football now, Coach Drew, is, we might give an American kid a chance to punt, but it's nice to have like a 26-year-old Australian who's going to be like a freshman in college, who's a grown man. He was an Australian rules football player, and those guys have been really productive. And then you got Eli Ozick at kicker, who was 16 of 18 on field goals last year. 54 out of 91 of his kickoffs were touchbacks. Those numbers are pretty good. So even though you lost LeVar Woods, the special teams coordinator, who's highly regarded by all, I think that special teams is still going to be pretty solid in Iowa City this year. I was a little worried about losing Xavier Nwankpa. Drew, don't judge me for saying Nwankpa incorrectly. I can get it right about 3 out of 5 times. That's my best. But you lose Nwankpa to graduation, you lose Ettinger to the portal, and you're like, ooh, shoot, we got a lot to replace in the defensive backfield. But you go out and get Cody Haddad from Ohio State. His dad played in the NFL. He's got a good pedigree. This is a kid who in high school was the three-way player, Coach Drew. This is something that I get excited about. The kid was an offense, defense, and special teams standout in high school. I'm not going to sit here and read you his high school stats, but the kid's just a baller. He's got a nose for the football, offensively, defensively skilled, has ball skills, plays the ball in the air well based on his high school film. That's a big pickup to me. But the even bigger pickup is Tyler Brown from JMU, who's a 2-time All Sun Belt guy. He had 80 tackles and 6 pass breakups last year and an interception. You're getting 80 tackles and 6 pass breakups at safety. You really can't get a lot more productive than that. I mean, not to compare him to Caleb Downs, but those are pretty close to what Caleb Downs' numbers were this year at Ohio State. It's a pretty high level of production. Another one they got that's interesting is they got Styles from Robert Morris. I saw this kid post on Xavier Styles' post on social media, Coach. Does this sound like a Fortune 500 CEO, or does this sound like a college football player? You tell me. The quote that Xavier Styles had: slow success builds character. Fast success builds ego. Stay patient. That sounds like somebody's dad. That doesn't sound like a college kid. He had 36 solo tackles and 6 pass breakups last year at Robert Morris. And I'll tell you, Coach Drew, I really dig on this stuff. As you guys know, if you've been watching the Midwest Blitz for very long, it's hard to get a lot of film and a lot of accurate stats on these kids that play at the FCS level sometimes. But everything you see about this Styles kid screams winner and a hard worker. So, I mean, I don't think you could have done a lot better at the safety position in the portal than they did. I mean, I guess it would be nice if you had, some All-American transfer in. That doesn't happen very often. I think the Hawkeyes did well for themselves replacing production in the defensive backfield. I got an interesting one for you at the edge, Coach Drew. So obviously you lose Ethan Hurt, you lose Max Llewellyn. Brian Allen, who's a kid you expected to play a lot next year, transferred to Vanderbilt. You brought in Kamari Brown from Elon. Kamari Brown is kind of an interesting guy. He's more of like a linebacker. He's like an athletic linebacker playing the edge. But he had 12 sacks and 3 forced fumbles last year. This kid's got a nose for the ball. He's got a serious first step off the line. Little undersized right now, like I said. I think they list him at like 225 or 30 pounds. But you get him in the Iowa strength program and get him beefed up a little bit. I think here in another year, he's probably a real contributor for you on third down rushing the passer. Another kid you got that's a project is Lance Ingold from Northern Illinois. This kid's a big body, Coach Drew, 6'5", 240 pounds. I don't think he's 20 years old yet. It's hard in modern college football to actually find somebody's eligibility because what is eligibility? The NCAA doesn't really know what it is. I don't really know what it is. You got kids playing 6, 7 years. But this is a young kid who still has a chance to grow into his body with a big frame at 6'5", 240. And again, in the Iowa strength and conditioning program, will do wonders with a kid with that kind of frame. Here's one I liked, Coach Drew. Bryce Stevenson comes in from Holy Cross. You got a lot of FCS guys coming in here. This guy is stout on the defensive line, this Stevenson kid. He's 6'1", 295. Had 37 tackles last year. Any defensive tackle that has that build and is as strong as this kid who's getting almost 40 tackles, I think is a good pickup. This is a guy that plays with leverage, Coach Drew, who's going to be hard to move, is definitely going to help you replace a lot of snaps, a lot of production on the defensive line. And you got a lot of young guys returning next year too. Obviously, you lost a lot of seniors that were starters, but I think you got a lot of young guys who are ready to step in. I think getting a veteran guy like Stevenson in, like you said, helps you bolster and solidify that room. Iowa's not going to have any trouble stopping the run next year. I like this Stevenson kid. Another one they got, Coach Drew, who is interesting is Emmanuel Olabaju from North Dakota. So this is a big old kid listed on the defensive line, over 300 pounds, he runs a 4.9 40-yard dash is what they had, 2.5 sacks. Limited production, but high potential. This is just a kid that's raw and needs coaching, but definitely an interesting guy to get in there on defense, Coach Drew.
Yeah, so, well, Nick, actually, wow, you were mentioning all these players. A lot of them are coming from smaller schools. We got North Dakota State,
Right.
which now is going to be a Division I school. Everyone saw about them in college football,
That's true.
rebuilding them, right? And then we have Elon. So we have a lot of these players that are coming in. But one of the key things that I mentioned before, and I want to elaborate more on this, is that a lot of these kids are going to smaller universities. And I will recognize that what Indiana has done with Signetti is going after guys who have experience, right? And have been playing and has playing time. How is that going to translate? Can they build them the Iowa way and then get them on the field? I mean, you got a kid who's been playing college ball at a smaller university, still college football. We're not taking away anything. We understand the Big Ten is elite, but they do have 2 years of college experience. That person has 2 years of growing muscle, and he's older than 18. He's not just a regular freshman coming in.
Right.
So you bring in these guys who are underrated, not undersized, just underrated, and
Correct.
tweaking them into your system, Nick. I'm excited for Iowa. I'm excited for this transfer portal class. You know what? I might back Iowa again. I'm calling it now. Iowa, don't let me down 2 years in a row, but
I think that 2026 could be bright in Iowa City because, like you said, they've gone to a model here where you're bringing in proven production guys who have shown that they can do it on the field, not just with recruiting stars, which we know here on the Midwest Blitz are overrated. You're not looking at guys high school recruiting stars. You're looking at a guy who's been productive at a different level of college football, but still college football nonetheless, as you mentioned. I think that assuming it's fair to assume that you're able to replace some of the offensive linemen you lost from the best offensive line in college football, but you have one of the best offensive line coaches in George Barnett to be able to get these new guys to step in and fill roles with the offense evolving a little bit with these receivers they got in. I think that Iowa doesn't necessarily have a better team next year than they had this year because they had a hell of a team in 2025, but the schedule is way more manageable. So I'm really excited to see what the Hawks do in 2025. I heard somebody who I like a lot, College Football with Sam. That's a college football podcast you guys should check out. Free plug. We don't have any affiliation with him, but College Football with Sam has the Hawks as a dark horse with potential to make the playoff next year based off the schedule and this portal recruiting class and what they already had in-house. I think 2025 is going to be exciting for Iowa. I really do.
Yep. Go Hawkeyes.
Go Hawks. We'll see you guys in the next one.